Today we're going to cover 5 steps people use to help them manage anger. All right, so we're going to address 5 common steps that people use in order to manage their anger. And again, I'm using the term manage anger intentionally, right? Because control is not what we do. We're looking to manage it in an appropriate way. So anyway, I'm going to go through 5 steps briefly, and then later I'll make videos where I will cover each step in a little more detail. Step 1, understanding your anger. So understanding your anger is very important as far as when we're talking about anger management, because clearly if I don't understand the origin of my anger, then it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for me to try to manage it. Step 2, know your triggers and signs. So we'll have signs or cues that we're becoming angry. And these cues involve a number of different things, but generally we'll have physical cues, emotional cues, behavioral cues, and cognitive cues. So the physical cues, examples of the physical cues would be like your heart rate increasing, you beginning to sweat, and other changes that happen to your body. It may be different for each individual. And the emotional cues, we're talking about other emotions that trigger us towards our anger. Because remember, anger itself is a secondary emotion and usually is preceded by some other primary emotion, and that's usually an emotion that makes us feel vulnerable, feeling abandoned, feeling lonely, feeling disrespected, all these different things. We begin to get angry when we have these type of feelings, because they make us feel vulnerable or make us feel weak, and we don't want to feel weak. So when we begin to get angry, these other more primary emotions are pushed out, and then we're left with the anger. And as men, we feel comfortable identifying with anger more than we feel comfortable identifying with these other emotions, even though these other emotions are absolutely natural. So then we also have cognitive cues or cognitive signs, right? And this is when we begin to think negatively, right? We have negative thoughts. You may remember a situation that occurred in the past that got you upset or got you angry about something. And now, even though it could be years later, even decades later, you start getting upset all over again, right? Or you may even imagine a situation that don't even exist, that never even occurred, right? But you start getting angry because you imagine it's going to happen. It could be, you might suspect or start thinking, like, let's say your girlfriend or wife or something is cheating on you, for example, and you start, imagining with her coworkers or friends or something, and you start getting these thoughts, right? Now you have no proof, you have no reason to think that this person is doing that, right? But for whatever reason, it comes up in your mind. So this is also another sign that you may be becoming angry, or you may be having some other emotional response that you may need to look into, or that maybe you should look into. And then we have the behavioral cues, right, or the behavioral signs, and these are the only ones out of like the 4 cue categories, or the 4 category of signs that other people can observe, right? The behavioral cues. So the behavioral cues may be you beginning to pace back and forth. Maybe you clench your fist, maybe you start slamming doors, throw your phone on the floor, you break something, so these are the behavioral cues. And these are also generally the things that we get in trouble for, to start yelling and screaming, threatening people, and assaulting people or such. So this is generally what we get in trouble for. So when we say we get in trouble for anger, it's really things like these, right? These behaviors. Okay. So then we have triggers, right? So we talk about the signs, right? But then we have triggers, which kind of go along in the same area as like the signs. So the triggers can be different things, and they will vary by the individual. So people, for example, that may have been picked on as a child, right, will have certain triggers that they happen. Like, let's say if they see a bully or see someone being bullied, that may be a big trigger for them. um, People that have been, assaulted in different ways and stuff like that, and they see somebody going through similar type of abuse, it will be, or it may be a trigger for them. If you grew up under like domestic violence situation in the household, it could be a trigger, right? And it's very important that we learn what these triggers are. It could be certain activities that we see. It could be certain words that people use towards us. That may cause us to become angry. And if we don't know what our triggers are, then we're vulnerable to put ourselves in a bad situation unsuspectingly, right? So it's important that we identify these triggers. Then on step 3, we talk about uh, learning ways to cool down, right? Learning ways to slow down when we get angry and to de-escalate is what we want to do. Because generally when we get angry and we start, let's say if we're interacting with another person and we start yelling and screaming, and then the situation begins to escalate, right? So what we want to do, ultimately, we want to de-escalate the situation or the argument or what have you, so that it doesn't get out of control. We want to keep everything in control. One way that's helpful is breathing, right? Learning to breathe, taking slow, deep breaths, and counting, right? Like back in the day, they would always say, take a deep breath and count to 10, right? But it's not just one deep breath, right? You're continuing to breathe and incorporate more oxygen into your bloodstream, which in turn is going to take oxygen to your brain, and which is going to help you to think more clearly. And the counting helps to distract you from the negative thoughts that you're having. If you're anything like me, when you get angry and it involves, especially when it involves another person, that thought process can get very dark, right? You can take it somewhere that you really don't want to. So when you're able to do this breathing and distract yourself with the counting, it gives you an opportunity to begin to de-escalate. And that's the only or the main purpose that the counting is for. And it don't have to be counting. You could do something else. Like some people will do like, let's say if a person was Catholic, for example, they may, recite like a rosary, or like a Muslim may recite what they call a dhikr, which means remembrance. And it's kind of similar. I guess you could say it's similar to like what would happen with a rosary, but obviously it's different categories. Some people may read a verse from the Bible or the Quran or something like that to help them, while also continuing the breathing, right? Because again, these activities we're using them to try to help us to de-escalate our anger. And then step 4, finding other ways to express your anger. So again, it is the aggressive behavior that gets us in trouble when we get angry, not the fact that we become angry. Because sometimes we may have a good reason to become angry, and it may be perfectly justified, but we're not justified in becoming aggressive and assaulting people and such, right? So we want to find other ways to express our anger, such as, having conversation with the person after we calm down. Generally, it's better to deal with the situation when we calm down. And this is something that I didn't realize, especially as a youngster, right? I grew up in a generation, to get off where you're mad at generation. So, so the idea was that, okay, you get upset with someone or about a situation, you get off, right? You get into a fight, you deal with it on the spot, and then, you get it out of the way. The problem with that, and especially as adults, is that if you're already angry, you're not going to have your clear thinking. So it would be better for you if you allowed yourself to calm down before you had the conversation with the other person, and giving them an opportunity also to calm down, so that they don't, continue to try to escalate the situation. It also gives you an opportunity to determine how you want to word the conversation, and that is important because sometimes it's not so much of what you say, but how you say it that ends up causing a problem in a situation. And then step five, it talks about look after yourself, right? And meaning, taking care of yourself, taking care of your health, getting enough sleep, which is a huge issue for me. I am a horrible insomniac. But taking care of yourself, getting proper sleep, eating meals, and not allowing yourself to, just live off junk food, which I'm guilty of as well. Um, and so the healthier you are, the better your temperament is going to be when you're dealing with other people, right? So all of these things, and these are things that you're going to practice on a daily basis. So if I, let's say I know these things, right? I know all of these different things, and I say, well, that's cool. Okay, I know these, and if ever I get angry, I'm going to use them, right? I'm going to use them. So it is unlikely that you're actually going to use any techniques that you may know in your head if you haven't practiced them within your behavior, right? On a daily basis, or at least on a regular basis, because we're going to do what we normally do. We're going to do what we're accustomed to do. And if that is to act out violently, to act out aggressively, then that's what we're going to do. Not because we necessarily want to continue to be violent or aggressive or anything like that, but it's because it's what we normally do. We go to what we know, right? Those are our go-to tools, if you will. So we want to make our go-to tools things that help us to improve and move forward in a better way. And that's going to be learning better ways to handle our behavior, right? And also changing our perspective about the situation is huge. That is absolutely huge that we change our perspective, right? Because if I am looking at things from the most negative perspective, which I in the past always had a tendency to do, then I'm gonna get angry, right? Because I'm thinking that everything is a personal attack on me. So me looking at the situation from a different or a better perspective is going to be more beneficial. So anyway, I just wanted to touch on these things, these five things, and I will have a time or make some more videos where I will cover each one of them in a little more detail.